This is Nan McKay, and this is part of our Pivot and Soar series. We're interviewing trailblazers who have pivoted away from their former career to another venture by creating a business. Our guest today is Leslie Andrachuk. Leslie is a global digital publishing and marketing executive who pivoted to founding Alpha Woman Co., a multi-platform media company with the mission to help women be their best physically, mentally, and professionally. So welcome, Leslie.
Hello, Nan. Thank you so much for inviting me to the show.
Leslie, you've pivoted several times. Take us on your pivot journey. What was your career prior to pivoting, and what business are you in now?
So I spent quite a few years in digital publishing and marketing. So I pivoted from marketing, in fact, digital marketing, which I entered into in around 1997. So when digital just started. And so I spent quite a long time in digital marketing until it was about 2005. I was invited to join the Toronto Star as a digital publisher. So I was able to pivot into the digital content area. And I learned a tremendous amount during my 7 years spent as a digital publisher at the Toronto Star. Now I've taken all of that experience in marketing, particularly digital marketing and publishing and content creation. And I've launched my own media company, my own multi-platform media company, building upon all of that learning and all of that experience, which, as you mentioned, is called Alpha Woman. And we have a very strong mission to help women globally optimize their lives.
So optimize their lives. Tell me more about that.
That's a great question. So I have this dream that half of all corporations, that may be kind of a lofty and kind of a silly goal, but half of all governments must be diverse and inclusive by 2034, at which time I'm just going to go skiing. But that is that is my goal. And I really do believe that, there have been a lot of movements in the past few years. There's been Lean In and the 30%. And up here in Canada, we have the Women of Influence. But really, none of those movements have changed any of the metrics. So my feeling is that every woman is an alpha woman, but our lives are very complicated. We tend to care for a lot of people other than ourselves, and we tend to put our careers and our financial futures on hold as well. So Alpha Woman, we strive to help women balance our lives physically, mentally. That's about you, physically, mentally, professionally, and financially, so that you can become the most powerful person that you can be, which in turn will impact your community, impact your family, impact the businesses that you work for. Women lead differently, and hopefully also impact the way governments are formed and lead. I think we saw a lot of differences in how women government leaders approached even the COVID crisis in simple life expectations of COVID patients were vastly different with women-led nations than with the more patriarchal men-led nations. So it's a big mission, but I really believe that every woman is so strong. The stories we hear about women are amazing. Just your average woman.
And how is this going to fit into the government initiative for DEI?
Well, I don't know what's happening down there in the US, but in Canada, with Justin Trudeau, he came out when he was elected way back in 2016 and said, you know what, and then reelected. He put up, he said, my cabinet is going to be half female. So we're certainly obviously underpinning what the government here in Canada is coming out as a very clear mission. Of course, we have in different provinces governments that are not particularly supportive of that mission. And we still see a huge disparity. For example, in Canada, all of the premiers of all of our provinces, that's like your governors down there, they're all men and they're all male. So we have a lot of work to do. And, that's a really great question, Nan. We haven't really put together any advocacy programs to work directly with the government, but, you're putting a really good idea in my mind.
Yes, I think there's a way to meld that. So tell me more about your podcast and your webinars. And then weave in, what advice do you have for women who want to get into podcasting?
Yeah, so we started our podcast about a year and a half ago, and it just seemed a natural for me because a lot of what we do on Alpha Woman is profile incredible, fierce, resilient female entrepreneurs around the world. And it just really comes to life in that podcast format, where we can really have a more intimate discussion with our interviewees. And it certainly has turned out that way. And so what I would say for women who are getting into podcasting is have a very clear mission and a very clear idea of the content that you want to create. I would also say, listen yourself to lots of podcasts and find the ones that you like the most, that really speak to you the most, and figure out what it is they do well and try to mimic some of that. I think the other thing is that you need to be curious. What I love about my podcast is I meet so many incredible women, and I have this 45 minutes where I get to know them like a friend, and we have a really cool discussion. And after that, I feel like, wow, I've just met someone who has totally inspired me. So that's what I would say is like, be relaxed, stay curious, have a really authentic approach to the content that you create. And the other thing I would say is make sure that you build a marketing engine so that you get eyeballs and traction, the right eyeballs to your podcast. So what I had done previous to launching my podcast was we had a digital publication that had been going for about a year and a half. And we had a brand that was recognizable, a brand that people really were attracted to and they wanted to support. So when I launched the podcast, reaching out to guests wasn't cold. It wasn't like, well, who the heck are you? Why would I be on your podcast? People were like, wow, Alpha Woman, yes, I really want to be on your podcast. So there was a roadmap for me to launching that podcast. And then the last thing I would say is if you want to bring in a partner and co-create content, I think that you really want to find someone that you vibe with, that you have a really strong connection with, because people hear that on air. And again, when you go and listen to other podcasts, listen for that. Because where you do find podcasts where there are two co-hosts, and it can be a really fantastic experience or a little bit uncomfortable.
What do you think about the financial aspects of it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think like any new media, and I say new because it is still fairly new. Like any new media, it's still being figured out. And digital in particular has suffered from, since day one, digital media has always been, how do we make money? So there are no easy and fast answers now. And I think a lot of us jump to, okay, well, let's just put it on a platform like Patreon, and I hear new ones coming out when I'm listening to podcasts. And, I've sort of shied away from that because a lot of what that means is that another company basically owns your membership, and that can get very tricky. So in the podcast world, yeah, it's not easy, but what I would say is, invest your time, build a brand, and if you can diversify off a podcast platform, perhaps create video, use the content that you create, the audio content that you create to build your social media channels. You'll find over time, especially if you understand who your audience is, and make sure you do that. If you can convey who your audience is to potential sponsors, there's a way to monetize your podcast, but I'm not going to pretend that it's simple and easy.
How do you find out who your audience is?
That's a really great question. Oftentimes you have to ask. So, and this is where, when I say, hosting your podcast on a third-party platform can sometimes be a little tricky, because in those instances, you may not be able to learn as much as you can about your audience as if, say, you have all of their email addresses, you can email these individual surveys, ask them questions about who they are and learn. And that's really the only way that you're going to learn about who your audience is. The other way is, creating community around your content. So if you're able to create community and then really actually ask psychographic questions of your community, you can over time understand what kind of content they value and what they value about your brand. So that's it's also the importance of making sure that you really do cultivate your own community. Don't leave that community on Facebook. Don't leave that community on other platforms.
Let's talk about starting a business. What advice would you have for someone thinking about quitting their job and starting a business?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, number one, you have to make sure that you have the financial runway. That's a very, very important piece. I would also say that make sure that you have a very clear vision of what it is you want to accomplish with your business, and have a very clear vision of the mission. And also make sure that when you go into this, you have quantifiable goals. The other thing I would say is that even if you have a good financial runway, have some sort of secondary income, some sort of side hustle that you can lean on in case things don't really go the way that you thought that they would go. For instance, many of us during COVID, we all certain revenue streams dried up. And so as an entrepreneur, I've made it my business in these first few years to make sure that I have multiple revenue streams so that I can pay my mortgage, make sure that my family is fed.
So when you say multiple revenue streams, you're talking about the digital magazine or publication that you had as being one of those?
So what I'm talking about is even from a personal standpoint. So when I started my business, I started it with a partner. And so we've bootstrapped this business. We've put in our time and our personal money. Now, I am actually a single parent, Nan. I don't have a huge financial runway. I didn't at the time. So for me, I personally had to have a side hustle. So I have a marketing consulting company, and I help companies with their marketing on the side so that I can personally pay my bills. Now, now Alpha Woman, 3 years later, is a full-time business. But in those early years, when I left my full-time job, I made sure that I maintained that marketing consulting company for a couple of years just to make sure. And thank goodness I did, because during COVID, most of our revenues were based on our events. That was our revenue strategy for 2020. I had a full day Alpha Woman Entrepreneur Conference organized for March 20th. Yeah, so you can guess what happened. So thankfully, I did have these other ways to create revenue for me personally as I dealt with what was happening with the business. And that's what I would say when you start out as an entrepreneur. And that might be, other people might have $200,000 in their savings account, that they can actually apply to their business. I didn't.
When you've pivoted several times, did you know what business that you really wanted to do right away? And if not, how did you decide?
That's a great question. I've been very much an organic, uh, I've developed my career very organically. And I have a lot of times followed my heart and followed my interests. So I would say that the most deliberate pivot I have ever done is with Alpha Woman. I really did decide 3 years ago that I wanted to take my marketing, digital marketing experience in particular, but I also have a huge amount of just traditional marketing experience as well, combined with my I have a very unusual set of skills and experience, combined with my publishing experience and with my content development experience, and create a media company. I decided I wanted to create my own media company. And that was very deliberate. And then the second deliberate thing was to create a media company focused on female empowerment. It was a moment in time. And as time has gone on, I believe that it's become even far more important in the past 3 years.
I totally agree with you. What steps did you take? What were some of those first steps to create your new business?
Yeah, good question. So, and I was with a partner at that time. He's since left the business, but we really defined, what is our mission and what is the vision and who are we serving? So really defining who is our target audience. And then we defined how are we going to serve this target audience? What does that roadmap look like? And then, you know, perhaps some might say the most important question is, how are we going to make money doing this? So put that plan together. So there was a plan before we physically invested in doing anything. And once we had put that plan down on paper, and that plan has changed in the past 3 years, but it's actually really interesting in how little has changed since that first vision really was set out. So then what we did once that vision and the mission and target audience and all of that was articulated, we then built our digital publication because we knew that that's what we're really good at, is building a digital publication with great content and then creating the marketing channels to market it. So of course, concurrent to all of that was the development of the brand. And I think that one thing that we've done extremely well at Alpha Woman is the brand development, the logo, the visuals. You get an immediate sense of what the mission is when you see the logo and the name, and how we push that brand essence through all of our channels.
I think one of the hardest things for people starting a business is the employees getting help. You can't necessarily do everything yourself when you're also starting to grow your business. So how did you deal with all that? Did you hire employees? Did you go to places like Fiverr or Upwork? How'd you deal with the administrative duties? Can you talk about all that?
Yes. So I was very lucky with my business partner. When we launched, he and I had worked together at the Toronto Star for quite a long time. And so our division of labor was very clear, and he took care of a lot of the admin details. And I took care of the marketing and all the content development. So we really didn't need to hire anyone full time in the beginning. What we did was I hired really everyone that we hired were freelance writers. So I did hire freelance writers, and they came mostly from my network. I didn't reach out to networks such as Fiverr. I wanted to really focus on creating really good quality content. Over time, though, with 2020, which was just a crazy, crazy year, What's happened now, though, is something really fantastic, Nan, and this is something I want to share with your audience, that has given me life and really breathed a huge amount of life into Alpha Woman, and has actually taken us to a new level where we've been accepted into an accelerator program, in fact, down in California. Yeah, very exciting. And so what happened was, at the end of last year, I was connected with a platform called Ripen. And what they do is they match interns up with post-secondary institutions, educational institutions. And then companies can go find interns. So what happened was I launched an internship program. And lo and behold, it's been extremely successful. The interns love Alpha Woman. I currently have, I mean, I've had, I think I currently have like 11 interns. Yeah. And they keep coming. I keep, and so what's happened is now the educational institutions, like I'm working directly with the University of British Columbia, with the University of Western Canada, and now we're working directly to create internship opportunities for these young, incredible students. And literally, I am just beyond the moon. They are so bright and come with so many incredible ideas. And not only that, we've launched a vertical called Young Alpha. So they came to the table with this idea, and I am living for it. So, for example, this month is menstruation month at Alpha Woman. And so we have these young Alpha interns from around the world exploring how women and people, experience their periods in various places around the world. And this is so exciting. It really brings Alpha Woman to life. So what I would say to people, business people starting out, is don't hesitate to find interns, whether you approach your local post-secondary institutions or you find platforms like Ripen. There are others I know that are around there who all they want to do is help interns find really great businesses to help give them experience. So that is the way that I have literally just started loving my business after the disaster that was 2020. the difficult year that was 2020. Now I'm just like, yes.
And I think it's so much fun working with young people because they're open to so many different things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also at this time in my life, I've had a 25-year career. I've built many teams. I've worked internationally. I've had teams working across continents. The way I've positioned myself in my business is that I can truly help provide a huge amount of value for interns and give them a really valuable learning experience. And I think that I've literally been able to do that. So now what's happening is they tell their friends, students, oh, I'm having the most amazing time at Alpha Woman. And then they're now literally approaching me saying, we want to intern with you. That is incredible. And, when this accelerator program down in the US heard that in California, they were like, yeah, people believe in your brand. They want to work for your brand. That to me says that investors will want to invest in my brand.
So how do you supervise them? How do you direct them?
Ooh.
Do you do it over Zoom in a group, or do you do it individually? How do you do it?
That's a good question too, because they are literally spread across Canada. And so I've got Toronto, Vancouver, Saskatchewan, and Mumbai, Tokyo, Kuala Lumpur. so it is challenging. What I do, so I do have one-on-ones with all of them. So some of the ones in Vancouver I can do group meetings with, but the ones who are in around the world, I'm often up at 7:00 in the morning, 7:30 a.m., just doing my weekly one-on-one just to check in. But what I do is I make sure that they have a very clear direction when they come on board, that they understand how they quantifiably are going to impact the business. And so I make sure that that I'm also working with. It's really my most important thing that I can be doing right now, is working really effectively with these interns. So I make sure that they are my priority. Their meeting is my top priority.
Interesting. What were some of your top resources? And it could be people, could be something like a book, a coach, a podcast. What helped you along the way get from kind of here to here?
Yeah, that's a good question. So um, I had this idea in my head of what alpha woman is, or and interestingly, my own growth along the trajectory of growing alpha woman, I think it's also helped me step into my own alpha woman-ness. So there have been a few podcasts that I've really enjoyed, and one is Michelle Obama's podcast. Yeah, I just love her. We're the same age, and I very much admire how she conducts her life, the woman that she is, the professional, the mother, the wife, the family that she's built. And I found her podcast really inspiring. Brene Brown is another one that another woman that I find very inspiring. The messages that she puts out into the world were important to put me in the right headspace about what I'm trying to accomplish here at Alpha Woman. But one that really informed what I wanted to do with the Alpha Woman podcast is one called The Conversation. It's a BBC podcast. And what they do is they have two women from different parts of the world. So you might have one woman in Utah and one woman in like Zimbabwe. And what they do is they talk about a common passion or a common situation, and they compare and contrast how they live this situation in these two parts of the world. And it's a really, really interesting podcast. So what that did for me is it really, really inspired me to think of alpha women not just as the CEOs of these companies and women who have gone through Princeton or gone through like McGill and have big careers. The reality is that there are so many just fierce, resilient, incredible women living normal lives around the world. And so that really raised my consciousness with regards to what I wanted to achieve at Alpha Woman. This is every woman, every woman.
Tell us what one of your surprises might have been along the way. And I say that because I think one of the things that new entrepreneurs are thinking about is, what do I have to worry about? So, but also what might be one of the positive surprises as well?
Yeah, as an entrepreneur, I think one of the most challenging and surprising pieces might be partnership. So it might seem really simple and easy and hey, let's do this. It's going to be so great. We've worked together for years and oh my God, we love each other. But the truth is when you step into a business partnership, it is complicated and it is like a marriage. And as we all know, anyone who's been married, marriage is really hard. And I would say that be very, very careful when you start a partnership. I think that was one of my biggest surprises. It can go very south very quickly because people get very emotional. It's about their families, it's about their money, it's about their stability, and oftentimes it's not necessarily about the business. So that is, and I would say also, if you do step into a partnership, make sure you have a good legal agreement that covers you should anything go awry. So that was one of my biggest surprises with regards to entrepreneurship. One of the best parts of entrepreneurship has been what I was referring to before. I am humbled that the interns that are working for me and the women that I approach and the women that we interview and really anyone who says to me, wow, I love what you're doing. It is so amazing. You know, I can't wait to get involved. I can't wait to support. That is humbling to me. and really makes me kind of emotional because you know how it is, Nan. As an entrepreneur, you spend a lot of your time by yourself in your head, just doing stuff to get that business continually running. And a lot of it is just stuff that nobody really sees. It's not sexy. So that feeds my soul. And I look for those moments. And I'm seeing them more and more as time goes on.
On the other side, what do you have as an example of something that maybe you would have done differently?
That's a good question. I think definitely reevaluate who I go into business with. Be very cautious about partnering with anybody, whether that be on a project or on a larger scale. Just be very cautious. Take tiny baby steps.
I have a friend who went into business with someone, did all the work creating, got all the patents, everything, and had a partner that decided that along the way, and it wasn't very far along the way, that she should have a huge share of everything. And it became just the thing that was like a divorce.
Yeah. It can get so ugly.
So ugly.
Yeah.
Share with us some of the most important lessons that you've learned.
That's a good question. First of all, it is critical to care for yourself. So yeah, time for so make sure that you have a plan, to physically eat well, to get your exercise, to get sleep, to carve out time for yourself. There's a huge tendency when you're an entrepreneur, especially when you work from home. I think a lot of us during COVID have felt that, to work 24/7, 365. And I can tell you right now, you will fall ill, you will get sick. And when that happens as an entrepreneur, well, who's going to run your business? You don't have long-term disability. There's none of that cushy stuff that you have in corporate life. So take care of yourself. I would say if you have, from a mental health perspective, entrepreneurship is very hard. I would say if you have any unresolved trauma, if you have any unresolved mental health issues, go to a psychotherapist, get yourself some help because it's hard. This is a challenging road. You need to be 100% to be able to be, balanced and present and strong to really focus on the things that need to be focused on and to build that business. And I would say that you can't do this alone. So either find yourself, like I said, some interns and find people that you can lean on. If you don't want to bring a partner into your life, even someone that you can talk to, a coach, a mentor, somebody that will help you along the way, an advisor, and make sure this is a trusted advisor, because a lot of time as an entrepreneur, if you're on your own, there are crucial decisions that you have to make by yourself, and you need someone that you trust to be able to run these decisions by.
That's a really good point. What do you like best about your entrepreneurial lifestyle?
Well, I think I've got to that point in my life where I really like making all the decisions. I like being in charge. I've just been working for a long time. I'm a leader. I've stepped into my leadership shoes. I love it. I obviously love making my own schedule. I can just take a day off when I want. And I actually do. I am perhaps a rare entrepreneur, and I tell my team, you know what, you won't hear from me from Friday at 6 p.m. until Sunday at 3. So if you need me, let me know now. And I do that. I turn it all off. Otherwise, literally, I will do far too much. and it's not good for me physically. I have a very active adrenal system, and I get into a state of fight or flight very, very easily. So I have to be very aware of that.
You have given us so much in the way of advice and guidance and thoughts. I really, really appreciate the time that you've taken to do this. Do you have any last thoughts you'd like to leave us with?
Yeah, I do. So I've come to the conclusion in my many years in life and working and um, going through a lot of stuff that, time is really our only true currency in life. We can make money and money comes and goes, but time will never, ever be recouped. So I I am on a mission to do something meaningful with the time that I have left on earth and to spend it with people that I enjoy being with and that I feel, I have a really solid, good connection with, and that I can give love to and give all of the, the passion that I have in my life, and then it will be received. And I think that, once you do that, you will get back tenfold in return.
Well, I think that is very good advice. And thank you so much for being with us.
My pleasure, Nana. It's been such a pleasure.